Hello and welcome to this week's Wellness, Wealth and Mindset Weekly, personal lessons and experiences from our past week. So let's deep dive into this week's show. Health-wise, I wanted to ask you a question and answer a question for you. So what would you do if you just started cycling? And I wanted to share my experience of how I started cycling and what would my advice be as a coach and also from my own personal experience if you're just getting into cycling and you're looking to improve your fitness and you might struggle at the moment to cycle just to work, for example. So when I first started cycling, it was when I was quite young and I would just go on adventures cycling with my friends. However, once I got back into cycling as an adult, I remember getting my first bike and then wanted to do a few triathlons. So the triathlon distances at the time were quite short, maybe 15 miles, 25 miles max, Olympic distance triathlons. So I was doing some cycle rides on my own around my local area down in Devon, and there was like a 30-mile route that I'd done when I was younger as a charity event. So I was doing that regularly, and that's what I was doing for the majority of my time while I was building up more endurance. And I didn't really have a structure or plan. I just was doing this route regularly and judged my fitness on how maybe easy the route felt at the time, or if it felt harder at the time, depending if I was going harder or faster. This was back before we had Strava, so I wasn't really measuring my time or my power or anything like that. I was just measuring how long it took me to do the ride. And then that then crept up into doing more longer distances. So started then cycling from where I was in Devon, from Plymouth to Totnes and back, which is about double the distance, 60 miles. And I remember at the time my brother was cycling with me. At the time he was more experienced as well. And getting to Totnes was fine, but getting home from Totnes was a real challenge. My legs had completely died. I could hardly get any power in the pedals. Every time I pedaled, my legs completely were aching like mad. And then I had to slow down and then pedal again and try and freewheel just to give myself some recovery on the bike. But looking back now, that was a really good lesson because I had to go to the point of a little bit of discomfort there, dig deep mentally to get home. And there was only one way home, and that was back the way we came. And that then led into me doing more in terms of going out more on the bike, cycling more, and then improving my fitness that way. And then the biggest change from there was then coming to London, joining the community that I'm with now. They were a lot faster than me, trying to stick to the wheel, and then eventually being able to keep with them, going out and doing my own rides, doing my own training, learning from how they cycle. Realised that me just cycling once a week wasn't enough. Used to be more of a weekend warrior and then think I could stick with them, but when I was chatting to them, they were all on a turbo trainer in the week or doing more cycling in the week, maybe commuting, where my job didn't facilitate me commuting to work on the bike. So it all became a matter of time on the bike. So if you are starting out, my advice would be just focus on gradually increasing the amount of time you're spending cycling. And one person questioned me once, how do I get better at cycling? I was like, just cycle more. As simple as that. The more zone 2 you don't have to do hard efforts, but just building a really good solid base of endurance will help you over time to get stronger and fitter. And then that way, that will allow you to be able to do harder efforts without emptying the tank, because you've got a good reserve of endurance-based fitness that's built up over a number of weeks, months and years, depending on how long you've been cycling. And then that way, you'll get fitter and stronger. And my advice, maybe join a club or join a community, be around people that are a little bit better than you, because that way you're always going to have to try and keep with them, which just forces you out of your comfort zone. And that way you're always going to improve. If you try and push yourself hard on your own, it can be very limiting at times because we tend to take the easy option as it gets harder, and there's no one there really to motivate us. If trying to keep the wheel, that is a good motivator to try and aim for, as opposed to if you're going around on your own, slowly but surely you're going to dwindle and you're going to probably suffer because it becomes more and more challenging, because the work is harder on your own than it would be if you're drafting. So if you are new to cycling and you're looking to get fitter, cycle more, maybe go and do some events in the future. Just start cycling little and often. That could be once or twice a week around your local park, eventually maybe commuting to work once a week and then getting the train home and then cycling back home the next day after taking the train, or commuting back in by public transport the day after. And then over time, just increase the amount of distance that you're doing at weekends. Try and cycle at least 3 times a week to give you a good opportunity to really accelerate your improvements. If you're just cycling once a week, you are going to see some improvements in your fitness, but that fitness is going to be quite slow in its progress. So try and be consistent at least 3 times a week. Zone 2, so you're out of breath, working up a sweat, but you feel you could probably pedal for quite a few hours, and obviously be based on fueling how long you could go. But that way you're in a nice comfort zone that you're not going to overtrain, and be able to build up a good solid base of endurance for a number of months, and then start building on more high intensity efforts, which will then get you stronger. And obviously joining a cycling club where you have to keep the wheel and work a little bit harder, and they can push you, then that's also going to take you to that next level. So if you are new to cycling, follow those tips and see how you get on in terms of slowly increasing your fitness levels. And let me know in the comments below if you've got any questions when it comes to improving your cycling ability. I support amateur cyclists to cycle faster, recover quicker, and lose some weight along the way. So if you are interested and you'd like to learn more, then send me a DM over on Instagram or comment on this video. Or like I said, if you're listening on the audio, just send me a message over on Instagram, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Wealth-wise this week, I want to talk to you and show you how I managed to go to Barcelona on a return flight with British Airways for £1. So if you've not heard of the Avios points scheme through British Airways, then this is a scheme that allows you to accumulate points on a credit card, which then you can utilize for holidays or flights with British Airways. And they have a British Airways credit card. The first one you can get is free, and if you sign up, you get a bonus of so many air miles if you spend a certain amount in that time. And also there is a paid version where you get more air miles. So in my case, I joined quite a few years ago, just before COVID actually, and did the premium one, so I had to pay £150 at the time for a whole year. That's gone up now to about £250, I think. However, that gave me a big chunk of air miles, like 30,000 air miles, if I spent 2 or 3 grand in the space of 3 months initially, and then 12 grand, I think it is, over the course of a year. So in order to do that, I just spend everything I spend, which I would normally do on my debit card, on my credit card. And I put as much as I can through on my credit card, and that accumulates in order for me then to accumulate their air miles, and I just pay off my credit card in full at the end of each month, because that's what I would normally spend on my debit. And over time that accumulates in terms of giving you more air miles, but also if you spend £10,000 or £12,000, depending on what credit card you have, a year, that also gives you a companion voucher. And a companion voucher means that you can go pretty much anywhere, depending on the flights available on the companion voucher itself and the time of year, to fly anywhere that you like for a discounted rate just by paying the taxes rather than actually paying for the flight. So you're just paying the taxes. And depending on where you're flying, obviously when I flew to Barcelona, because it was more of a short haul flight, then I didn't need as many air miles on top of my companion voucher to pay for it. And that worked out that I only paid £1. Could have paid more and used less air miles, but I'm only using these air miles for flights. I'm not really using them for anything else. So I might as well spend it. And also my friend got to come along with me as well for £1. So you can bring a friend along with you. And this is what I tend to do every year now, is spend my allowance every year on my credit card. And that gives me a companion voucher, which I can use then to go on holiday, and me and my girlfriend go away and use it together. So that way we get a cheaper holiday, because we're not spending most of the amount on the flight. We're saving a lot of money on the flight. And we flew to Corsica last September, and that flight was only £70 for both of us, return ticket. So that way it allowed us to spend more money on the holiday itself, accommodation, activities, spending money while you're there rather than spending that money on the flight. So the money you save, you can spend a bit more on enjoying yourself while away. So if you are not utilizing this way of travel and you do travel a lot, then certainly advise you to jump on board. It's a really good way of just being rewarded for your naturally spending habits. As long as you're good with your finances and you pay your credit card off in full, you're not going to get charged. And then those bonuses will accumulate for air miles, which then you can utilize for your companion voucher each year and also towards other flights if you want to do so. And also the air miles can be now converted into net points, which my girlfriend does. And then that gave her, instead of her companion voucher, it gave her £200 or £300 to spend in Sainsbury's. So again, it can go towards your shopping. So if you're spending it in Sainsbury's anyway, you're going to get that money back in order to spend it back in Sainsbury's. So kind of a nice little sort of recycle of finances. So definitely advise you in terms of wealth wise to try and utilize your money as best as possible. Rather than just spending it, look at ways of saving it and look at ways that you can maximize your spending habits to benefit you as much as possible, and look at ways like the Avios British Airways credit card like I use in order to help you treat yourself every now and then if you are going on holiday and you want to save some money. So it could be your yearly holiday that you could use as companion voucher for, and obviously if you are going away with you and your partner and you'd have a family, two of you can save quite a bit of money on that flight and save quite a bit of money as a family as well when you put it all together. So that'd be definitely my advice in terms of how I managed to get my British Airways flight for £1 return to Barcelona. And if you're looking to explore this in more detail and you want to ask me any questions, then again, post the comments in the description to this video. Happy to help you out as much as possible. And also post a link to the credit card in the show notes and the description to this video. So if you want to click and check it out yourself, then you can also do so. So get on board with the British Airways Avios credit card points credit card scheme. I'm not affiliated with them. They're not paying me for this. I'm just sending some advice that I actually use myself, and hopefully that can support you to get more from your holidays in the future. And finally, mindset wise, what happened to me this week is that I had a really hard bike ride on my own on Sunday. It was about 70 miles, 17 mile an hour. When it's on your own, it's pretty tough. And the rest of the day, I was absolutely wiped out. And the lesson for me was how much your fatigue and tiredness affects your mindset. I'm a very bubbly, energized person and really motivated and always looking on the positive side of things. However, I went for a walk in the afternoon with my girlfriend and I wasn't much entertainment, wasn't delivering much conversation because I was absolutely knackered. So I think on a mindset standpoint, it's really important to understand your sleep. We've talked about that before, and your recovery period of time after exercise in order just to make sure that you are at your best. Because if you're constantly always tired, if I felt that tired all the time, I'm certainly not going to be a nice person to spend time with. I'm going to be pretty boring. I was pretty tired. I needed just time on my own, and I needed a good night's sleep. And after 2 nights sleep, I managed to feel myself again after the rest that I just needed to get after a hard day on the bike. So I think it is really important if you are struggling, certainly with your mood, and you might not be feeling at your best. You might be feeling a bit tired and sluggish, and you might want to feel that you're questioning why you are struggling to not be as bubbly or engage in as much conversation as you might have done in the past with colleagues or with partners at home or family. Then maybe review your sleeping habits and your activity levels in terms of how much rest you're having in comparison to the activity you're doing. And that can also be the activity you're doing in work. So if you are working pretty hard and quite stressed, then make sure you're taking some time off in order to regenerate. Our brains help to, when we're asleep, our brains decompress. It's like rebooting your computer. That's when we store all the information that we consume on a daily basis. So if you can make sure you prioritize sleep, you're going to be, certainly your brain's going to be more alert and ready to fire at all cylinders in order to benefit you and others around you within the workplace and at home. So my advice this week, certainly based on my experience, that if you are feeling overtired, prioritize your sleep for a few nights, and that should be a priority every night, but obviously even more so if you've had a hard day of work or of training. You might need to go to bed a bit earlier just to give yourself more sleep to try and regenerate a little bit more based on the activities you've done. So if you are doing a lot of exercise, a lot of training, then make sure you be listening to your body. If you're not feeling as good or as energized, or as you're not as conversational as you might be, not as talkative as you might have been in the past, or you are normally, then maybe look at that as a sign of getting more sleep, more rest, and maybe take a couple of days off, as I did, before you get back training again. Or if you are going back training, make sure it's recovery-based training in order to not over fatigue your recovery and compromise that. So listen to your body. If you are feeling not your best, prioritize rest and recovery, and you'll be back on track before you know it. So that is this week's Wellness, Wealth and Mindset Weekly. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and thank you for reading. If you haven't subscribed yet and you like a regular dose in your inbox every Friday, then click the link in the show notes below where you can subscribe for free, where you get a weekly dose of my personal lessons and experiences. So hopefully I can share some with you, and you might be able to take a few away to implement and learn from as well. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again next week.